Today, we are going to cover all of our permits in our Permit Manager application. We're going to primarily fill these out via our web application, follow through the approval or revision requesting process, as well as completing a permit. We'll wrap it up with how we can manage and view some reports about all of our permits in the system as well. I'm going to get us started by logging into that web account here, and we're going to look at our permits on our home page. I'm then going to navigate specifically to our permits module here, and we are going to start with adding our permits. To add any of our 5 permit types, we'll go over here to our right-hand corner and start by clicking the plus icon to add a new permit into the system. We can have all types of users add permits into the system, such as project managers, contractors, facilities, and etc., can have access to add permits in the system. Much of this information is going to stay the same, depending, but then have additional sections depending on the permit type. We'll automatically generate a permit ID number, but first we can select the type of permit we're requesting. We'll select above ceiling for starters. We have the option to link a permit with an associated project or a work order. So if you're interested in our project risk manager tool, such as our PICRA, ICRA, and ILSM, these 2 applications integrate really well together, as well as our work order application as well. So we'll see a couple of examples of that a little bit later on. Next, we can take a look at our description and location information. Here we can identify contacts internally within our organization who are going to assist us with this project, and that responsible person on site, whether it's a vendor or staff internally. We can confirm that they have passed the training that we require in order to work in the facility. We can enter in our start work date and stop work date, even a time if we want to be very specific as to when we are doing that work. We can even be specific for our start work date and stop work date, even down to the minute if we so choose. Otherwise, we can just list the date to be more generic there. We'll also list our location information about where the work is being done that this permit is needed for. We'll start by selecting our campus, then we can select our building within that campus, floor. We can continue to be more specific, even to the department or room level as to where we are doing this work. We're doing the hallway, outside of cardiology. Right? We can select an approval group if you want to have multiple groups to potentially approve this, or we can have one designated group for approval of the permits. In this case, I'll select our safety group who's going to be responsible for approving our permit. We can enter in a description of the work being done. So we're going to run some new fiber internet cables, right? We're going to run those through the ceiling to install some new fiber cables, right? We have the option to enter in notes in our notes log here, just a running log, date and time stamps that with the author so we can keep track of any notes across the life of this permit that we need to there. Now we'll see sections here that are applicable specifically to our above ceiling permit type. Again, much that we've seen so far will stay consistent from each type of permit. We can review our instructions for the above ceiling. We can then confirm some information about our rated barrier and fire stop work, that we're going to do it to code, confirm who our certified responsible individual is, what type of products we plan to use for our fire stop as well. And then noting the items to be installed, modified, or removed as a result. Then we'll have the option to request this to be approved. So I'll check the box to verify my work approval to submit this request. Once I click submit, it will trigger a notification to my approval group. The approval group will then be able to review the information that you submitted in your permit and decide whether it is approved or if it needs modification. Those individuals will receive an email such as this, just so we can take a look. We'll get some high-level details about the permit and a link to log in to approve it. Those users will then navigate to that permit in particular. Resume here. I'm going to now impersonate our approver here. So we're going to edit this permit. They will have a section at the bottom if you are a manager where they can indicate the permit status, approval notes, and etc. Since we will send this to a group, we do want the person who's making the approval to enter in that information, select the date, and any notes. If it is good to go, right, they can enter in that as well, and they'll change the status to approved. In the event that it's not, you also have the option to request that the permit get modifications made, right? We can change the status then to permit modification needed. And instead of adding our notes in this approval section, we would add them below in our section for permit modifications requested. You also have the option to basically deny that permit entirely. Whatever work they're going to do, they can't do it even with modification. We're going to deny that permit entirely. So no matter what response you give, we will send a notification to the person making that request, whether it's approved or needs revisions or is denied. In the event that it is approved first time around, right, they will receive a notification, and you also have the option then to include the permit as an attachment. So if we want to take a look at a sample of that here, let me pull. They will receive this email confirming it was approved and even receive an attachment of that permit so they can print it themselves and get to work. If you prefer that they don't receive that via email communication, that they still stop by the safety office or facilities office to pick that up, that's also an option as well. Once it's approved, we will, the contractor, vendor, or internal team member will go and perform the work as specified in their permit. If approvals aren't received in a timely fashion, we can also send out email notifications to those approvers so that they can get a reminder about approving that. Once the permit work has been completed, we're going to ask that user who requested it to come back and close out the permit in the system. They'd be able to log back in, and from their permits, they'd even have a list of views here. As an admin, I can see all permits, but as a contractor or project manager, I'd just be able to see the permits that I requested. I'd be able to see my approved permits here, and I could navigate to it to edit and close out that permit as well. So I could click my pencil and paper to go back to editing that particular permit here, and I can request closeout. In this case, we're just requesting closeout. If you'd require them to add some sort of documentation or any other notes before requesting closeout, you can do that there. We'll also send them a reminder if they haven't closed out their project by the time the stop work date has been exceeded, right? So we can send them a notification reminding them to close out that permit. When they request closeout, we will send an email notification to those approvers asking them to approve it for closeout. They have the option then to return to this record. They will click edit. They can review the information and go walk the job site and then decide whether they need to return the permit for additional rework. Maybe the job site wasn't cleaned up properly, or there's just some things weren't done to your satisfaction. You can return it for rework. Otherwise, you can mark it as inspected and closed. Either way, depending on the situation. They can always re-trigger it for approval if you don't inspect it and close it if you return it for rework first. So we can do that, close out this permit. And then that permit status will then, oh, I forgot to change that permit status too. We'll do that real quick. We're also going to mark it as inspected and closed. And we are done with that permit and on to the next one from there. So that same process, that same workflow for approvals, requesting revisions, denial, returning for rework, and inspecting and closing is going to be the same for all of our different types of permits. We can direct those approvals to different groups and things like that based on your organization and who is responsible for approving those. So we'll take a look now at those different types of permits so we can see all of the differences between them. I can actually even add a new permit when I'm on an existing permit to make life easy. I can click that plus icon here and it'll open up a new form for me as well. If I select a different permit type, if we now look at our confined space, we'll see that the section down below is going to be specific for our confined space hazard and safety information, such as listing the name of the safety attendant, our confined space entrance hazards, entry requirements, rescue plan, and etc. that we can fill out here. I'll also have to verify the work before submitting it as well. Follow that same process for confined space. If we want to take a look at our fire system permit as well, we'll have instructions specifically for fire system permits, talking about how long the fire system will be offline, permit information, right, and request that as well. Next, we have hot work, right? We'll have hot work permit instructions, information about open flame attendance, precaution and safety checklist for them to fill out as well, right? We'll finally have utility shutdown here as well, right, with some instructions noting affected parties that need to be involved in this shutdown and its full description listed out there as well. Right. A couple other things to keep in mind that we can use in our system for permits and the requests that we make. There is that notes log that I mentioned here, right? We can add a note and it'll date and time stamp it for us, so we can see all those notes entered. We also have a content tab. This can be especially helpful if there's some floor plans or related documentation that you want to upload so that everybody can access it in the system for that particular permit. We'd be able to click upload here, and we could select a file or drag and drop it from a file folder here. I can go to my desktop. I have a floor plan here for us that we can use and attach it there. We can make as many attachments as we need to this particular permit so that we can have them for reference along the way. Okay. From an administrative perspective, we can manage all of the approval groups that we want to be able to access with these permits. So we can create as many groups for different scenarios to approving permits that we would like, and then we can manage the individuals within there. Typically, we have a primary contact, a secondary, and then any additional contacts. We consider the primary person the main person we're going to bug and hold responsible for those approvals, but we know not everybody's in the office at all times, and so we can provide the option for additional contacts in case they are unavailable to make sure that that permit gets approved in a timely manner. If we resume looking at our permits view, we have access to all of these different views of our permits. We mentioned briefly that we can see all permits as an administrator or a safety team member, and we can also see permits specifically that I entered or that I requested. We can use these views to navigate to different lists of permits. So you'll see that they actually follow the different stages of a permit, such as being requested, approved, requiring modification, if it's denied, returned for rework, or inspected and closed. So those are essentially pre-filtered views, although you can filter them further to navigate to additional records if need be. One final thing, we talked about being able to print out a permit once it's been approved, and that comes via an email notification. As users within the hospital too, we can grant you permission to also print those off from the web here. So you could open up a permit and there's going to be a print icon that lives in the right-hand corner. You'd be able to click that and print that permit additionally at any time if you choose not to email that to the particular individual who requested the permit, requiring them to print it out. Finally, we have some dashboards and reports that are going to help you manage and keep an eye on your permits. As a reminder, Soleran's platform is an integrated compliance management platform, so we can actually integrate with our other applications automatically in the system. So I mentioned earlier that the permits actually works really well alongside our project risk manager tools. You can see this permit in particular is actually associated with a project. So if I click that project ID, I can navigate to that project and its associated risk assessments as well and see that information. Actually, this permit was created as a result of this particular project. One of the things that I filled out in my assessment was the requirement of any permits. I listed this as needing an above ceiling permit, and it actually initiated the creation of that above ceiling permit and was able to fill out quite a bit of the form for me. And then I finished it off before triggering it for approval. It's one of the nice ways that we can tie these things together in the system. You can also do things such as tying it to a particular work order as well. So if we look at this particular permit, I can have it linked directly to a work order as well. All right, we're going to wrap things up with looking at some of our dashboards and reports so we can keep an eye on not only our projects, but projects in the system as a whole. Our first dashboard that we're going to take a look at here is our all permits dashboard, showing us all the permits across our locations here. So we have broken this down into several reports so that we can see information kind of as an overall summary. We can do things such as graphs and reports and detailed reports down here below. We can look at our open permits by status. We can see how many are in the different status options we have, by the different types of permits that we have, and even who is requesting the most permits. We can then see a detailed breakdown of which permits are in which status. We can see a list of requested permits, approved permits, and etc. We can even pop these out into a new window for more detail so that we can see actually all of those permits that are currently being requested down here below. We can even export it to a PDF or Excel from the right-hand corner. We can filter these further and even link directly to a permit by either clicking the pencil icon or pencil and paper to take me straight to that permit in the system so that I can finish either editing it, requesting it, approving it, or etc. from there. So the reports are going to be interactive for you. Another nice option, especially for the purposes of presenting these particular reports. One other nice feature for the purposes of presenting a dashboard is you can actually pop it out into a new window to clear out the navigational panes on the left and the top. So I've already opened up one for my particular permits, so you can see those panes are gone. So you can focus just on your reports and drill into them. So again, that's especially nice if you're trying to present or review some information in a meeting. Well, that's all we have for you guys today, and thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, certainly let our team know, and we'll be happy to answer them.